Well, good evening, Internet. This is Second Strike, and welcome to my Counterattack Series. For those of you watching a video of this series for the first time, the overarching insight on which it is based is that leftist propaganda generally adheres to the following formula. First, find something bad that exists in the ambient, that is an element of the human condition, like poverty, crime, or bigotry. Second, blame that bad thing on one of the left's targets, like the right, America, Christians, or white people. Third, compare that bad thing unfavorably to a hypothetical leftist utopia, then demand power to bring that utopia into being. This formulaic argument is vulnerable to a formulaic refutation, namely, identification of the ambient bad thing in question as it exists among leftists themselves, and their hypocrisy in demanding power to eliminate it. Today, we are applying this refutation to a soundbite produced by premier left-wing propagandists, the Young Turks. Watch how in this video they attempt to identify political violence, i.e. terrorism, with the right wing.
Recently we had the shooting in Kansas. A couple of Jewish community centers were shot up, residents in a community center, by Frazier Glenn Miller. He shouted Heil Hitler as the cops arrested him. He shot 3 people, and of course, since all these racist, anti-Semite bigots are idiots, he wound up shooting 3 non-Jews. He shot 3 Christians in the name of Christianity. Okay, there's no end to their stupidity. So now, as he's doing that, Peter Bergen and David Sturman realize, wait a minute now, it looks like there's actually been a lot of these right-wing terrorist attacks here in the U.S. since 2001. And they wrote an article about it in CNN. It's actually one of the best articles I've seen on CNN in a long, long time. I want to give them credit for it. And here's what they point out. Do you know that since 9/11, there have been 34 people in the U.S. killed by right-wing extremists and 21 people killed by Al-Qaeda-related terrorists? So 34 to 21. Oh, by the way, left-wing extremists, they exist. They have done violent attacks against property, etc. Number of people killed, 0. Says, since our report was leaked, Department of Homeland Security has not released a single report of its own on this topic. Not anything dealing with non-Islamic domestic extremism, whether it's anti-abortion extremists, white supremacists, sovereign citizens, eco-terrorists, the whole gamut. We stopped paying attention, but they did not stop attacking us. Both problems are real, and they both need to be addressed.
These are cuts from the video in question. I have put a link in the video description and encourage its use for all those interested in verifying that I have not excluded important context. From these clips, the standard leftist argument structure is clear. Terrorism is a bad thing that has always existed and will always exist at some level. Cenk identifies it with the right wing by saying that more people are killed by right-wing terrorists than by Islamists. And at the end of this video, he calls for the problem to be addressed by the same methods used to combat Islamic terrorism. Looking back historically, these methods have been military action and substantial reductions in civil liberties. Hopefully, Cenk would find the first one inapplicable in an internal context, but it is doubtful he would so consider the second. So, by Cenk's implication, terrorism is really a phenomenon caused by the right wing that can be done away with by a leftist ascendancy. Is this true, or does terrorism exist prevalently on the left as well? The people writing the stats Cenk cites say no. They say that left-wing extremists haven't killed anyone. Are they right? Here definitions are of course important. What makes a terrorist right-wing and what makes a terrorist left-wing? If what we are looking at is causal responsibility, then there is only one standard that makes sense. How positively are said terrorists portrayed by the popular commentators of the ideology in question? An ideology, ultimately, is nothing more or less than its propaganda. The only way it can be responsible for the actions of a terrorist is if said propaganda is supportive of said terrorist. 2 of the terrorist groups that Cenk mentions, as right-wing, are neo-Nazis and white supremacists. Such terrorists have received negligible propaganda support from right-wing commentators. When Dylan Roof shot up a black church, he received universal condemnation from right-wing commentators, and his victims' families were praised as models of Christian virtue for the message of love and forgiveness that they held to even after the attack. Right-wing commentators did not try to deflect or distract from the attack, but covered it and offered their condolences. By contrast, with this most recent terrorist attack on New York, Cenk himself is working hard in this very video to point the focus at anyone but the terrorist who committed the act. His video focuses on supposed right-wing terrorists from before 2009 who, altogether, killed a little more than 4 times as many people in 7 years as this guy did in one attack. These supposed right-wing terrorists are selected and presented at this time for the clear purpose of minimizing the importance of this attack by comparison. In this very video, Cenk creates coverage for an Islamic terrorist by a popular left-wing commentator, himself, that is more helpful for the terrorist than any that has ever been given to a white supremacist terrorist by a popular right-wing commentator, ever. If the terrorists that Cenk would like to label as right-wing are in fact to be considered as such, then the Islamic terrorists, who are also the subject of this video, are much more to be considered left-wing. And while they might have killed fewer people than their counterparts from 2002 to 2009, at a rate of 34 fatalities every 7 years, even if the Islamists kill no one, it's going to take them more than half a millennium to catch up to what the Islamists did on 9/11 alone. If that doesn't prove how irrelevant Cenk's example of a threat is, I don't know what would. As always, the evil the left identifies with their enemies is present in the same or greater quantity among themselves. I've been Second Strike, and this has been the first installment of my Counterattack series. I hope it contained information useful to you, and good luck to you all.